President Biden saying he can still get the job done. Joining us now, Principal Deputy Campaign Manager for the Biden-Harris campaign, Quentin Fulks. Quentin, it's really good to have you. Thank you for being here. Has the president met with Speaker Hakeem Jeffries? I know there was talk that he was going to relay the concerns of his caucus to the president. Do you know if they've met?
They did. They did meet last night. The president and the leader had a very good conversation, a substantive conversation, as the president has been having with members on the Hill and governors and mayors and elected officials across this country for the past week.
Can you tell us a little bit about what was relayed and whether it swayed the president? I'm sorry, I said speaker before, I meant leader.
Well, I don't have insight into those conversations, but I know that it was important for the president to connect with Leader Jeffries, and so I'll just have to leave that at that.
What is the conversation like within the campaign right now? At the top, we just showed the president talking about all the jobs he's created, his record in the White House, and it is an impressive and extensive record objectively. He's gotten so much done, but he has had a problem communicating to the American public about it, and he's having a problem right now because so much of the conversation is surrounding the debate performance and whether he is really still up for the job. What is the conversation internally about how to change course and whether it's possible to change course?
Well, look, the conversation inside of our campaign is one that it has been for months, which is we believe campaigns matter. We believe we have to build an infrastructure and a campaign apparatus to communicate to American voters. That is how they're going to get the information. The president knows that he has to be out there communicating. We saw him last night for an hour give a press conference and answer questions about some of the most complex issues facing this country and the work that is being done. As he said in the clip that you played just a second ago, there is no indication that the work isn't getting done. 2,000 jobs just last week, 15.5 million jobs total, and the numbers keep going up. A new economic report talking about inflation going down. And so the conversation inside of the campaign is one of how we continue to tout those accomplishments that the president laid out, and then also how we make sure we're drawing the contrast of things like Project 2025. Trump and Republicans are going to convene in Milwaukee this week or next week to talk about Project 2025, which is Trump's agenda for a second term in America, one that's going to gut things like the Department of Education, gut checks and balances across this country, monitor women's pregnancies, ban abortions. Those are the things that matter. And Trump doesn't have a plan for anything other than himself, an extremist. He wants to tax the middle class so that the wealthy can continue to get ahead. And that is where his focus is. And so our conversation is continuing to make sure that we are drawing that contrast every waking moment, and that is what our campaign has been built to do and what we're going to continue to do from now until November.
Just a little bit more on what you confirmed just a moment ago, that the president and Leader Jeffries met last night. Leader Jeffries just a moment ago released a letter to House Democrats saying that he expressed the full breadth of insight, heartfelt perspectives and conclusions about the path forward that the caucus has shared in our recent time together. We're going to wait more word on what those conversations were like from our Hill team, who's currently trying to get to that reporting. But I wonder, how does the campaign feel with so many Democratic lawmakers now saying that they just don't think that he can do this? How do they feel about the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, a member of the Gang of Eight, Jim Himes, pressing post on his statement, asking the president to step aside the second the president finished his news conference last night?
Look, Katie, obviously we disagree. The president disagrees. Joe Biden is the Democratic nominee, and he is the Democratic nominee because he wants to be, because he has earned that right, 87% of 14 million votes, and because he feels that he is the best candidate for this job. And as he said, there's no indication that the job isn't being done. But I just want to take a step back here. The reason all of this anxiety is coming from a place of wanting to defeat Donald Trump. These lawmakers, everyone around the country, we are united in the fact that we want to beat Donald Trump. Our campaign is on a path to do that. As I mentioned to you, it is paramount that we continue to draw the contrast of things like Trump's Project 2025 versus our own accomplishments and that of our vision. As I said, Republicans are going to convene to talk about this and the extremism that we are going to see, and we have to do that. We're not going to get into a fight with these members. We are the Democratic Party, and we are stronger when we are united. The president laid that out when he talked about all the accomplishments that those members on the Hill have helped him do. And we are strong because voters are feeling that. Voters know what the president has helped them accomplish, and Democrats know that that under his leadership, record amounts of accomplishments have been done. The economy is coming back from the brink that Trump left it in, that President Biden immediately got to work, leading our country through a pandemic, creating jobs, continuing to bring inflation down. That is what's at stake. Voters at home right now, women, unfortunately, are thinking about their reproductive freedom. People are thinking about how they're going to put food on the table. They're thinking about corporate greed. They're thinking about rent prices. They're thinking about their mortgages. And that is what President Biden is fighting to do. And as the numbers state, and as the president, again, last night in his comments noted, there is no indication that those things aren't being handled under his leadership. And that is how he judges it. He's not in this about his legacy. He is in this to continue to do the work for the American people. And that is in stark contrast to Donald Trump, who is a felon who only cares about himself.
Quentin, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.